with Aaron saying Jason kind of colonized my crush. The American Society
of Magical Negroes.
A show made by tiny minds for people with smooth brains. This is a movie that started with essentially a meme and then decided to drag it on for 2 hours.
It's the most dangerous animal on the planet.
Shark.
White people.
Which unsurprisingly, fails. Yes, the critics' reviews are out, and the few people that could be bothered to see it aren't happy about it. Coming in at 50% for all critics, and if you click top critics, you get 20. One person out of the 5 top critics thought it was average. That would be bad enough. But in this case, it's bad for a very special reason. Because there tend to be 2 reactions to this movie. The first is, that looks like it's full of discriminatory bigotry. I'm not interested in that. Or when it comes to these reviews, it's not bigoted enough. This was just too afraid of making the majority of the audience uncomfortable. I don't know why. Maybe it wanted to be commercially successful.
I don't really understand.
It's easier to say.
This film lacks any edge or politics, because that's where you really want in an entertainment comedy. Have you thought about the economy this evening? Just joking, we couldn't put economics in this movie. We'd have to teach the creators to do maths first. Film takes on corporate and social hypocrisies. The premise contradicts itself, going for accessibility, which its own premise is trying to dismantle. We don't want accessibility in our movie. Why would we want people to go and see it? Ironically, it's designed so that the majority of the audience can feel comfortable buying a ticket. How dare you make a movie that people might want to buy tickets for? What do you think we are? Capitalists? He takes a terrifically clever idea.
White people feeling uncomfortable precedes a lot of bad stuff for us.
I feel like we've got a really low bar for clever here.
That's why we fight white discomfort every day.
Isn't scathing or edgy at all. Oh look, he's just repeating the safest, most mainstream idea ever created. But this movie is incredibly safe. It's impossible to miss how incredibly safe this movie is. He thinks that's because the main idea is challenging the status quo, and doesn't realize that the safe thing to do is the main message.
I just felt like it's my job to make white people feel comfortable, but maybe it shouldn't be.
At the end, he has a powerful impassioned speech that's backed up by nothing. But because, like the Barbie movie, it's because it was based on a fantasy.
It is literally impossible to be a woman. You have to be a career woman, and nobody gives you a medal. Everything is your fault.
This movie is based on a trope with a long, ugly history. Yes, it's such a well-trodden trope. Nobody's ever heard of it before. But don't worry, one guy said it in 2001, and that makes it definitely a real thing. The characters mostly speak in general platitudes, and the Barbie-esque monologue comes too late and doesn't make much of an impact. It can't decide whether it's biting satire or a charming rom-com. As a result, fails to do either. It's well made, but too broad to actually have any bite. Aims to critique and deflate the stereotype, but fails. Libby's aim is, of course, to critique things like the obvious complicity of saying things like, I don't have a racist bone in my body. No, you're already guilty. Now we're just trying to work out how guilty you are. Entertainment, folks!
And if I have to explode the engines and rupture this world and damn us all to hell, then I will!
It tries to do this broadly and smartly entertaining, but without substantial jokes. An authentically written caricature. It's almost like you don't have one to write. It just feels watered down, saddled by an unnecessary twist and preachy tone.
I'm curious to see how you gonna make it out of all this.
This is a movie that isn't as bad as the internet thinks, but it has no magic. It has charm, but not focus. Or my personal favorite, wait, I've just realized this guy's name is Nick Shagger. This is a socially conscious romantic comedy, and if those modes don't sound compatible, then they do nothing to alter the impression. Which reminds me very much of Echo. You know, the one where we got an actress who can't speak or apparently read lips, so we decided to cut the audio because we wanted to challenge the status quo, the way things have been done for years. And then once we made it, we realized maybe things have been done that way for a reason. Maybe actually making a movie where you challenge the idea that you should be polite to people in society, maybe that's not a good idea.
Yeah, it's actually fun and weirdly relaxing. So
maybe you should be polite to other people in society and act like a decent human being around them so that all of society can function together. And maybe making a movie entirely about how you shouldn't bear the majority's thoughts in mind and just deliberately piss them off is a stupid idea.
Because if you don't put Jason first, everyone's magic will fail.
No, instead, you get paragraphs of things like this, that it concludes with this big, long speech at the end. This is mentioned in every review, with many people comparing it to the farce that was Barbie's speech, essentially a deluded, miserable bint who had destroyed her entire life, and the only way she could actually cope with it is desperately try and pretend that her life is more complicated than it is, and it's all somebody else's fault.
Not so pretty that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood.
Now, in any good movie, her journey would have been realizing that her miserable life is her fault and that she should change. However, we didn't get it in Barbie, and, well, this speech comes too late and is expected to lift too much of the film's bare-bone politics to make a difference. When juxtaposed with the conventional final grace note, you're never quite sure if the American society wants to critique the anti-black world it exists in, or is simply content smiling in the face of the status quo. And there's a lot of capital B's in these reviews. As you go through the reviews, you do tend to get the impression that the film about magicians is still somehow more realistic than the world these reviewers fantasize that they live in.
Because the happier they are, the safer we are.
But as the trailers came out, there was two distinct tones. The first one was obviously the meme.
It was the most painful thing I've ever seen.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Whereas the second one had both the meme and this weird extra added on story that was a rom-com. You're like, hang on, how did that happen?
She's great.
Yeah, she's cool.
You kidding? Come on, man. She's smart and funny.
And that is very much backed up in the reviews themselves. This can't decide whether to go full biting satire or charming rom-com. Has a wildly uneven tone. It lacks broad appeal, which makes it harder to sell to a mainstream black audience.
That doesn't make any sense.
I thought you wanted broad appeal. Surely a broad appeal would apply to more people. A poignant take on real-life violence? From microaggressions to killing of unarmed people. What? What, going 0 to 100 there? I feel like you skipped a little bit of middle ground. A socially conscious romantic comedy that don't go together. Yes, there is a reason for this change, and it's because they came up with the meme first, and then realized they needed to make a movie out of it.
I know what you were doing going on about her. You're trying to set us up.
No, that's not what I was doing.
It turns out that when the idea for your movie is as shallow as a duck's backside and wouldn't even fill the back of a cigarette packet, that doesn't really lend itself to a 2-hour movie.
You cannot have a relationship with Lizzie now.
I was not surprised to learn that Libby had originally intended the idea of this to be a short. The feature has this unwieldy feeling of being sleek small comedy vehicle tricked out with a bunch of eye-catching gags to fill space. Or a rom-com. Let's just add an entire second genre in, because our idea doesn't last more than the trailer. And you can tell that by when he goes, this premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, and it's sharper and less saccharine than the trailer would suggest. Which is why a lot of the other reviewers are annoyed, because they went into the movie expecting some top-drawer bigotry. That's what the trailer had promised them.
Sure.
White people, when they feel uncomfortable.
Turns out you can't keep that up very long. Otherwise you end up seeming like the old man at the end of the road shouting at clouds. This film makes you think about the micro and macro of your interactions and beliefs. It makes you a paranoid lunatic. Do you think being polite to people in general society is a horrific crime? Have I got the movie for you? It's sharp, observant, whip-smart, provocative, and bitingly funny. You must really enjoy how easy it is to get Amy Schumer tickets.
This is bad. This is really bad.
This is my probably favourite 2 reviews back to back. It's designed so the majority of audiences can feel comfortable. Majority of audiences. This is a deftly observant fantasy comedy. He's like, I wish this was more racist. And the other guy goes, no, it's just the right amount of bigotry for me. This is deftly observant. It's whip smart and provocative. To notice that when you're around other people, it's generally best to try and bear their feelings in mind. And even though it has an uneven tone, there's something refreshing about its thoughtfulness. You know, I've never really sat around and thought, what would the world be like if I just never cared about anybody else? What if I considered that to be a good thing and then made a movie about it? I could run out of ideas 5 minutes in and then fill in the rest of the movie with just, you know, a romantic plotline for no reason whatsoever. Even though this is a debut writer, I'd never have guessed, sets out his stall in the most in-your-face way possible. There's a lot of subtlety in his work. Yes, when I was watching the trailer, the main thing I noticed was its subtlety and nuance. I've never really appreciated you for the hidden depths of subtle wit involved in a sledgehammer to the face.
What I care about is the reality of goodness, not the perception of it. And what I see all over the place is people who care about looking good while doing evil.
This was always going to be a difficult flight of fancy to land. The final act devolves into an earnest manifesto that feels ripped from an Instagram live. Libby, can I make a request? Could you do a day in the life of a Hollywood director video for us? I'd love to know. Do you have wine on tap? How many avocado vol au vents do you consume on a daily basis? I need to know.
You're gonna make me beg, aren't you?
This'll get some chuckles, maybe some self-examining thoughts. I have a feeling the main people who need to do the self-examining in this are the creators. This is a modelled, preachy mess that barely earns a single laugh. Aaron is an inspiring artist whose yarn sculptures at his latest gallery are a gigantic disappointment. But not because of how he looks, but rather just because they're terrible. No wonder someone thought he was part of the wait staff. They probably looked at him and thought, there's no way you could produce art as crap as that. That's definitely a 3-year-old making that. Aaron is fundamentally deferential and apologetic. The underlying reason for his meekness, though, is never explicated, other than it's a symptom of intolerant American society. It denigrates and devalues him so that he feels like he doesn't deserve to exist. How?
What are you going to do to stop the crazies?
And do you think society really shows that it values other people? Also, why do you think that society owes you that in the first place? You do realize personal value is generally something that you create yourself in your own life. Have you ever considered having kids? If you need to feel valued, then kids depending on you to actually eat every single day would probably make you feel pretty valued. As such, he's not really a person with actual distinctive traits or deep convictions, so much as a vessel for Libby's political sermonizing, which crescendos during a final that resorts to a lot of screaming about experience and acknowledgement. Acknowledge me! Kind of reminds me of Doctor Who.
Moisturize me, moisturize me.
Then he meets the magicians, where they say their submissiveness and suppression of their true selves keeps folks happy, helps lessen inequality, protect people, and maintain social equilibrium. I don't know, this is sounding like a pretty good idea. If you're trying to make this a satire, I wouldn't be showing it to have so many positive consequences.
Make it make sense.
The big idea is flipping the trope around and saying it's not demeaning and reductive, but empowering. Aaron doesn't believe this, but goes with the flow due to his lack of spine, which doesn't make any sense, because weren't we supposed to think he doesn't have a spine around other people? This just sounds like it's a personal problem of his, because he doesn't have a spine no matter who he's talking to, rather than anyone specific. The moment he's recruited, though, plot contrivances crop up to complicate his odyssey. Jason simultaneously rise up the corporate ladder thanks to being a bloke and his pala, and I'm sure being competent, a hard worker, and actually being likeable have nothing to do with it, no. Never works in real life, that does it. It's a shame he doesn't work in the airline industry, really.
Robin, we earned that.
The film, though, doesn't care about its characters so much as random talking points, meaning that the villain comes off as a symbol more than a human being. It's almost like this entire movie is just set up to preach to people, rather than be entertaining. The same goes for the main characters, who are two generically affable nobodies, despite the script giving them nothing but second-rate mush to spout. The pair have modest chemistry. Libby stretches out the gag for as long as possible before Aaron realizes it.
Who are you? What is going on?
This is turgidly obvious stuff masquerading as hot-button truth-telling.
The industry talks a lot about identity,
With Aaron saying Jason kind of colonized my crush. Which implies that Aaron owned her. The moment I have a crush on you, you are my property, and if anyone should take you, that means you've come and planted your flag in my ground. Aaron was there first. He was natively her boyfriend.
It's the pear of anguish. It was used on women who had relations with the devil.
Despite the fact they never got together. The whole thing plays like a messy, dreary provocation. The society excommunicates a member for violating their rules, says that the woman will now suffer the worst fate imaginable, being a regular person in America. I sentence you to the worst fate imaginable, being an American. May you go forth and wallow in high fructose corn syrup.
But I was making a number of kind of crass generalisations about Americans, though. I don't really believe any of them. And I did it for comic effect.
I'm an American! I'm an American!
The sage's belief that you should muffle your personalities and desires in exchange for safety is something in which the film doesn't describe, regardless of its early pretenses. Instead, its prime interest is in lecturing audiences about contemporary relations via corny rom-com machinations. That'll explain why so many people were disappointed it wasn't as edgy as the trailer.
So, what do you think?
I think it's a beautiful lie.
The material resembles Roger himself, phonily cheery on the outside, but hurt and angry on the inside. It's almost like nutters with a chip on their shoulder make insane movies which have a chip on their shoulder. The difference between the two, however, is that Greer's gentleman maintains his counterfeit smile throughout, but the American society falters, trying to act playfully when all it really wants to do, and ultimately does, is harangue. Who would have thought that Nick Shagger was a hidden savage? And this all comes to a head in the interviews, where the actors actually said, you know, the majority of the population might watch this and think, we're just tired of hearing you talk about this. Well, we're tired of talking about it. It's like, oh, are you, dear? Have you ever considered stopping talking about it? I'm fed up with talking about this. I'm going to do it anyway. Because I'm not self-aware enough to realize that I'm the one causing my own problems. Shut up. You'll solve your problem. And you'll also solve everybody else's. Although I guess it would be difficult if you're trying to invent your own problems so you can whine about them and make more money in cinema.
Some of those people are going to say for a
Tell
second.
it to the judge. The judge is the public.
We're tied to it. We want to get past this, but you can only get past it by going through it. I am so fed up of doing this, but I'm just gonna keep carrying on. Smith remembers the reactions during the screenings. He noticed that some viewers found themselves struggling to come to terms with the premise. Is it because it's deranged? People were triggered by seeing something they weren't ready to admit in themselves. Have you considered they were triggered because they simply didn't accept your delusional fantasy? This shows we're not a monolith. Yes, but isn't it strange when you're not a monolith, so other people have different opinions, and yet you're just obsessed that you are the only one who has the monolithic opinion, and everyone else must come around to your way. We're not a monolith, but we should be, and we should all line up behind me. Are you sure that you're not the one trying to institutionalize people? The subject matter I'm playing with is really sensitive, and people have strong, visceral feelings about it. Yes. I wonder why when I'm punching people in the face, they seem to be reacting to it. It's very strange. Why don't you just allow me to just keep punching you in the face and telling you you're the problem?
You're pure evil. And you're just another man taking credit for a woman's work.
I think that means we're pointed in the right direction. Yes, if you're attacking somebody and they respond, that means you've got to keep doing it, apparently. I'm genuinely excited for people to bring that same passion and conviction into what I think is the more sophisticated and intricate, nuanced conversation that the film is. Sophisticated, intricate, and nuanced, eh? I think the people involved in that conversation don't agree with you, such as it isn't as smart or funny as it thinks it is, or frankly, needs to be in order to work. I love the audience reaction, especially because it's a comedy. It's a muddled, preachy mess that barely earns a single laugh. This is people giving other people the permission to laugh. Laughing is a reflex. You can't control it. You don't need permission to laugh. If you need permission to laugh, it means it's not a reflex, which means it's not funny. What you're hoping for isn't comedy. It's not funny laughter. It's not reflexive laughter. You want clap comedy. Oh, I agree with your statement. Congratulations. Ha 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 ha. Aren't I so intellectual?
We're just a joke to you. Not so funny now, are we?
Especially about some of the trickier stuff. The script gives them nothing but second-rate mush to spout. No, what this movie seems to be, deluded people who have a far higher opinion of their own intelligence than everybody else does, who seemingly found a Wikipedia entry on a trope and thought, I can make some money out of this. This is one of those moments where you stand up and go, yeah, isn't it strange when we all do this, and everyone in the room turns around and goes, what? No, that's just you, mate. I don't know what it's like to make an entire movie based on your own worldview and then find out that, no, that's just you. It's just you that thinks that. The difference is that generally when you're wrong about the world, it's just kind of your opinion. If you just have some deranged view of the world, it doesn't really cost anything. But when you make a movie, well, now you're in the millions, even for a cheap movie. This is a rom-com, I'm assuming it's a cheap movie. Even the people that like it say the visual effects are hit and miss. I'm assuming it's a cheap movie. That or they didn't employ people on merit, who knows. But when even your cheap movies cost tens of millions of dollars, and the only thing you seemingly have going for your movie is desperately hoping that you piss off enough people for them to go and see just how bad your movie is, I'm not sure you're going to make a profit. Because at this point, even when all the companies send the people most likely to like your movie, and they don't like it, this is your target audience, and they don't like it, it really seems like I hope I cause enough controversy to get people into the cinema is all you have left. I wouldn't even be surprised if that's why statements like this are coming out in the first place. Because when even your reviews are going, this isn't scathing or edgy at all, from the people that wanted it to be, it seems like you may not even be able to attract an audience based off that value. So with this disaster, all I can say is good luck with the box office, because judging by what I've seen, you're gonna need it. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.